Hello and welcome to Channel 51 News for Wednesday, August the 6th, 2025. There is a lot of news coming from Australia and around the world, and you're going to see a real difference now in what's being reported and where these trajectories are headed. So let's get started right now with the lead story from at least Australia today, and there is a lot coming out of the United States, and you'll see the balance unfold as we go. This show is all about showing you how the narratives sort of weave together. So headline story, working together, French President speaks with Anthony Albanese on the implementation of the two-state solution. So Macron has revealed that he's working together with Anthony Albanese on the implementation of said two-state solution to end the conflict between Palestine and Israel after talks overnight. Well, the French president was the first major Western leader to conditionally commit to recognise a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly next month amid starvation crises in Gaza. Now, Albanese has restated his support. Now, meanwhile, the UK and Canada soon followed, sparking speculation that Australia could be next. The Prime Minister has neither committed nor ruled out doing so, but his government has acknowledged the global momentum for Palestinian statehood. The leaders spoke about the crisis in Gaza and their ongoing commitment to getting aid to civilians, according to a readout of the call put out on Wednesday. Both leaders discussed their long-standing support for a two-state solution. Now, the readout also discussed action on climate and France's support for Australia's joint bid to host COP31 in partnership with the Pacific, as well as the importance of finalising the Australia-EU Free Trade Agreement. The leaders agreed to stay in close touch and meet again at the United Nations General Assembly in September. Macron also spoke to New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon overnight. So we can see right there the globalists are consolidating around Palestine. Obviously, this is where they believe the support lies, but that is not the only case or the only way that this story will play out. Meanwhile, in other news, Senator Alex Antic has addressed the uphill battle young Australian men are dealing with in this country. To give you a bit of a headline here, we've got a pokey in your pocket headline rocking up today, how Aussie teens are getting hooked on gambling. Well, let's cut now to Alex Antic, and this was just posted by him yesterday.
Witnessing out in the community is the most enormous strain on young Australian males that I have ever seen. And if anyone's not seeing it, then they're not talking to enough young men out there. Whenever I talk to a young bloke in this country, he tells me that he is, no matter how much he works, no matter how hard he works, and no matter how diligent he is with his savings, he simply can't afford the life that his parents did, the life that his father did, the life that his grandfather did. And the anxiety out there because of the pressure on young men is a real and present problem in this country that is not being addressed properly. The question that is being left is, what are we going to do with a generation of young men in this country who feel totally and utterly let down by the system, totally and utterly left behind by an Australia that doesn't want to talk about them in anything other than pejorative terms? And for the longest time I have been talking about this. It is often accused of being toxic in itself, Mr. Deputy President, but the reality is that this is a growing issue in this country. It is one that politics is not addressing, and it needs to.
Need to be vaccinated. A large...
Well, it's quite shocking, isn't it, when you consider that young kids who are telling us that despite how hard they work, they can't save and they can't live in a lifestyle similar to that of their parents simply because of cost of living. And therefore, we're seeing now a push towards gambling. And worse, we're seeing headlines of influencers trying to promote gambling as well as a way out. Now, there is a broad spectrum of people that understand what's going on, and there are different types of gambling. There is pure chance, poker machines, etc. And then there are others that people may consider to be skilled, whether you're picking horses based on form. It's a very different level. But the randomness is very, very difficult to understand, and you certainly don't have education in relation to gambling. You have education in relation to avoiding it. So let's play a short clip from that was gathered here today, where you will see a 17-year-old painting a picture of what's actually happening in the school classroom.
I'm 17.
People in your class bet?
100%. Majority of them. Betting on horses, dogs, footy, basketball.
In class?
In class, during lunch.
Do the teachers not say anything?
Teachers don't see it.
Do they know? Like, do you have assemblies?
Oh, well, yeah, we'll talk to some of the younger teachers saying, "Oh, I've got a multi on," and they just don't really care.
Really?
Yeah.
But like, there's no like widespread like, hey guys, you got to stop. Like, there's no gambling awareness, no gambling education, no like the dangers of gambling.
It's not mentioned in our school.
Do they do that for like porn or anything?
Yeah, in some of the subjects they mention how it's damaging.
Because I remember that, but nothing for gambling at all.
Nothing for gambling.
And everyone does it.
I haven't heard anything about gambling in any of my classes.
It's interesting, isn't it, that you can see something that, first of all, it's not meant to be for children, but there is a big problem there. But of course, the lack of addressing it in the classroom, and it may be considered harmless and kids using available funds, but it's far more than that. Let's give you some stats. Australians lose an estimated $31.5 billion a year on gambling, the highest per capita losses in the world. But more worryingly, many Aussies start well before the legal age of 18. Various self-reported surveys, including by New South Wales and Victorian state governments, put the rates of underage gambling in Australia at a staggering 30 to 40%. Among 18 and 19-year-olds, that figure rises to nearly half. More than 902,000 under-20s have gambled in the last year, of which 600,000 were aged just 12 to 17, according to recent analysis by the Australia Institute. So you put that figure into perspective and it becomes quite startling. Australia's teenagers are now more likely to gamble than they are to play any one of Australia's most popular sports. The Australia Institute's Matt Saunders and Morgan Harrington wrote in a discussion paper that was published in March. Now, of the 902,000 12 to 19-year-olds who gamble, it's more than the 484,000 who play soccer or the 439,000 who play basketball, which are the two most popular sports in the country. Now, the reports warn teens were losing big. Annual expenditure on gambling among teenagers is up to $231 million, or an average of $86 per teenager per year. Of this, 12 to 17-year-olds spend around $18 million a year on gambling activities, about $30 a year for each underage teenager that admits to gambling. It's a relatively small amount compared to $230 million spent by 18 and 19-year-olds, which averages $321, or a staggering $698 a year on those who actually gamble. So when you put that together, that is obviously it's quite a lot of money there, $14, $15 a week on average being gambled, presumably lost by our youth today. Staggering numbers. Meanwhile, for perspective and balance, let's now cross to the United States, where the big beautiful bill provides for $1,000 government-paid starting deposits for newborn children. With the power of compound interest, new hope is on the horizon for American kids. Take a look.
Watching the best, Fox 10 News.
President Trump's big, beautiful bill could create a nest egg for newborn babies. The so-called Trump account is expected to provide $1,000 per child.
But is that really what families will end up with? Fox's Heather Sullivan explains what could happen to the accounts and the funds.
For babies born this year through 2028, the federal government will put $1,000 into a child's account that'll be invested until they turn 18. Parents and relatives can contribute up to $5,000 a year. If the maximum contribution is made each year on the child's birthday through age 17, the account could grow to between $191,000 and $676,000, depending on how the investment performs. But if the money is left untouched until the child reaches 28, the Treasury Office of Tax Analysis projects it could grow to as much as $1.9 million, or $600,000 on the low end.
A general rule of thumb in the financial business is that it's the rule of 72, and it simply says if you're earning about 7%, your money will double every 10 years. Or if you earn 10%, it will double about every 7 years. So if you look at that compound effect and say if somebody is able to give it 10, 20, 30, 40 years to their own retirement and in that type of account, it doesn't take a whole lot early on to get that to grow to $1 million in the long run.
But if the family doesn't make any contributions, the initial $1,000 could grow to between $3,000 and nearly $14,000 over the 18 years. And families can open an account and receive a $1,000 government investment for each child born between January 1st of this year and December 31st of 2028. A Social Security number is required to open the account, and the funds cannot be accessed until the child turns 18. Heather Sullivan, Fox News.
Big difference, isn't it? When you don't have to live hand to mouth, when there is a support network put in place and kids have got a real chance of hope. But if you're leading and living week to week, it's very hard, as exposed there by Alex Antic earlier, for kids to be able to try and save at all, to be able to put something in place to build upon. And of course, wealth is not something that it just flicks a switch. You grow it, you build it, you become skillful, and it's about the decisions that are being made. Well, meanwhile, in Australia, there is more threats of thousands of jobs being at risk as Australian manufacturing sector faces collapse. This was part of a story we covered yesterday. Thousands of Australian manufacturing jobs, particularly in regional areas, face significant risk as China intensifies investments to bolster its own manufacturing industries. According to research by the McKell Institute, approximately 73,000 jobs in Australian regions are reliant on refining and smelting metals are vulnerable. The report highlights the town of Port Pirie, which we covered yesterday in South Australia, where state ministers have called for a federal bailout to save its lead smelter, a crucial local employer. An analysis shows that if Port Pirie smelter were to close, the town's population could drop by around 2,000 people, or 11%. The report is claiming that China's aggressive industrial subsidisation, now likely exceeding its defence spending, is a major driver behind the mounting pressure on Australia's refined metals sector. In 2019, China invested an estimated $407 billion in industrial subsidies, enabling it to produce refined metals at significantly lower costs and flood global markets with cheap products. Now it seems when you're crippled, it's very, very hard to move on. So we're now going back to the government to ask them to bail out. And so it now looks like we have to explore the options of revaluing our resources and changing up the deal a little bit. The Band-Aid solutions aren't going to cut it. Well, over in the United States, this is big news for many people following along. RFK Jr. has cancelled 22 mRNA vaccine investments, stating they fail to provide effective protection against infections such as COVID and the flu. The vaccines fail to protect effectively against upper respiratory infections like COVID and the flu, he said. Let's now listen in to Kennedy's official announcement that came out on the HHS website.
Hi, it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here, your HHS secretary. At HHS, we have a division called the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, or BARDA. BARDA drives some of our most advanced scientific research. It funds developments of vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, and other tools to fight emerging diseases and national health threats. Over the past few weeks, BARDA reviewed 22 MRNA vaccine development investments and began canceling them. Let me explain why. Most of these shots are for flu or COVID, but as the pandemic showed us, mRNA vaccines don't perform well against viruses that infect the upper respiratory tract. Here's the problem. mRNA only codes for a small part of the viral proteins, usually a single antigen. One mutation and the vaccine becomes ineffective. This dynamic drives a phenomena called antigenic shift, meaning that the vaccine paradoxically encourages new mutations and can actually prolong pandemics as the virus constantly mutates to escape the protective effects of the vaccine. Millions of people, maybe even you or someone you know, caught the Omicron variant despite being vaccinated. That's because a single mutation can make mRNA vaccines ineffective. The same risk applies to flu. After reviewing the science and consulting top experts at NIH and FDA, HHS has determined that mRNA technology poses more risks than benefits for these respiratory viruses. That's why, after extensive review, BARDA has begun the process of terminating these 22 contracts totaling just under $500 million. To replace the troubled mRNA programs, we're prioritizing the development of safer, broader vaccine strategies, like whole virus vaccines and novel platforms that don't collapse when viruses mutate. Let me be absolutely clear. HHS supports safe, effective vaccines for every American who wants them. That's why we're moving beyond the limitations of mRNA for respiratory viruses and investing in better solutions. Thank you.
produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Well, that is a big announcement, and I can hear the voices now saying, but. There is no buts. The fact is that that is exactly where it's happening right now. Kennedy has called out exactly what the problem is. He's explained exactly what the problem was, and he's acting accordingly. And then he'll move to the next step, and he'll deal with that one and that one and that one. And he says he supports safe and effective vaccines for those who want them. That means if you don't want them, you don't need to take them in the United States. Of course, they pulled out of the WHO IHR pandemic treaty, and so it will be that America will retain her sovereignty, and so will its people. And this is a benchmark to which we have to, if that's what we want, to work out if that's how we're going to measure up. Meanwhile, as reported earlier in the bulletin, Macron, he's gathering up the globalists to support Palestine. It's interesting how the sides are being drawn, and we'll continue to watch on. Well, there was even bigger news today as James Comer, head of the House Oversight Committee, issued subpoenas for some very big names regarding Jeffrey Epstein. These people are summoned to appear before the House Oversight Committee. Take a look.
Files. Bill, Hillary, Garland, Mueller, Eric Holder, and Comey, just a few of the names called in for depositions. Comey saw the subpoena, dropped his seashells, and put out a hostage video. Watch.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my Substack. After last week's video, I'm guessing you spent 7 days laughing and chuckling and looking for healthy summer obsessions. Well done. Although time seems to crawl when Donald Trump is our president, it really goes too quickly overall. And so do the people we care about most. So I used to say, I order you to love somebody. It's the right thing to do, and it's also good for you.
Comer also slapped the Department of Justice with a subpoena to get his hands on the full Epstein list. He's giving him 2 weeks. The DOJ is considering releasing the full 2-hour interview of Ghislaine Maxwell they just did in Florida. Meanwhile, the New York Times got a peek inside Epstein's 7-story Manhattan townhouse. And when they walked in, they saw this, a sculpture of a bride hanging on a rope, along with dozens of framed prosthetic eyeballs lining the entryway. And they found surveillance cameras. We now have pictures of some of his surveillance cameras. Here's one mounted in the corner above his bed, and a second camera in the next room. Several of Epstein's victims say the house had a network of hidden cameras. So someone has the tapes.
Someone has the tapes. Someone else might have the tapes as well. There might be more than one copy of the tapes. Well, Tim Burchett put this one out today. The Clintons will be receiving subpoenas to testify in front of the Oversight Committee about information in the Epstein files. The deep state should be scared to death right now. Well, we've also seen the subpoena list, including Hillary Clinton, October 9, Bill Clinton, October 14, Merrick Garland, October 2, James Comey, October 7, Bill Barr, former Attorney General, August 18, ahead of, there are others there, former Attorneys General Alberto Gonzalez, Jeff Sessions, Robert Mueller, FBI Director, Loretta Lynch, September 9, and Eric Holder, September 30. And we're also given access to particularly the application for the subpoena for the Epstein records from James Comer, and details there all the way down, including all documents and communications referring to Epstein or Maxwell, all documents and communications within the case file, all documents and communications with regarding United States versus Maxwell, etc., etc., etc. And these people are going to now have to answer or take the Fifth Amendment, in which case that is only if it will be that evidence that you may give could incriminate yourself. So we know where that one is headed. It's a big, big story, and it's only part of what's going on, because we also know that the same names listed there and linked to Epstein, Comey, etc., and intelligence agencies, well, they're all linked up to what we know with Russiagate. So here's Tulsi Gabbard speaking earlier with Laura Ingram. She's talking exactly about the denials, because before there was the ignoring, and now we're at denial stage. Take a look.
Hey, regarding the Trump-Russia hoax, the media enablers that peddled the lie for years, though, are circling the wagons. This is extraordinarily stupid. It's extraordinarily stupid on so many counts. Barack Obama had nothing to do with this by anybody's accounts.
We're all for transparency on any potential corruption, right? But this is something that has been combed over for a decade now.
I think they're trying to create the appearance of progress in this investigation without actually making any progress.
They all did their job, right? For the 4 years, 5 years. Meanwhile, President Trump, he's awaiting answers.
I have nothing to do. Pam is doing a great job. I have nothing to do with it. I will tell you this. They deserve it. I was happy to hear it. I actually read it just like you did. I have nothing to do with it.
Here with reaction is Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence. Director Gabbard, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Laura.
There's a report tonight from the Federalist that the DOJ is actually asking you for more documents in its grand jury probe. Is that true? And what are they asking for now?
That is true, Laura, and I just want to point out how important this is, that Attorney General Pam Bondi, through the Department of Justice, is taking this necessary first step toward accountability, which is essential for the American people to begin to have any kind of trust in the integrity of our democratic republic. I met with the Department of Justice prosecutors today, and yes, they are committed to leaving no stone unturned as they conduct this grand jury investigation and find the truth. Obviously, we've already handed over the documents that we've declassified and released publicly over the last few weeks. They have more questions, and they're going to be really taking a deep dive into this, again, looking everywhere to find the truth and conduct this very serious investigation.
So Tulsi's addressing the denials now, and now she's asked about these denials and how it sort of plays out in her mind. It's really interesting because she's calling it out exactly as many of us are already seeing it, but now we're at the highest possible level, the Director of National Intelligence.
You heard the media reaction, and a lot of these same people were just buying lock, stock, and barrel what was sold to them during the 2016 election. But they're essentially saying, this is all old news. This is such a stupid political move on their part. And to that, you say?
They are using the same old tactic that the deep state's propaganda arm in the media uses. Whenever they come across something that is true and that doesn't go along with whatever their narrative is that they're trying to shove down the throats of the American people, they first usually ignore it, as they did when I first released these documents a couple of weeks ago. They tried to ignore it. When they realized that they weren't going to get away with this, that this story was going to continue breathing life, we continued releasing new documents. Then they decided, oh, we'll take this approach of say, oh, this is nothing. There's nothing really to see here. This is bizarre. This is a conspiracy. These are the things that they do over and over and over again. And the next step they will take when they feel that they are not succeeding in getting rid of this truth that we have uncovered for the American people, then they will go down the route of we must destroy and smear and attack the credibility of those who are delivering the truth to the American people. They've done this to President Trump. They've done this to me. They've done this to so many different people, once again, who are trying to tell the American people the truth and expose these people, many of whom you just showed, for who they are as the propaganda arm of the deep state, which would have no power and no influence if they weren't able to feed their lies into a willing spokesperson through the propaganda media.
Make no mistake, you go after the deep state. What did Chuck Schumer say? The intelligence agencies have got 7 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So now the guns are loaded and pointing the other way. So they've crossed the line and they have to follow through and they have to do a surgical cut at this point. Here now, Tulsi is, well, she's asked about Obama and whether or not it really does go as far as it's being argued that it does, given the amount of denials.
Now, Director, you said there was irrefutable evidence that Obama was the mastermind of this intelligence manipulation and the perpetuation of the Russia hoax. What is that irrefutable evidence for our viewers tonight?
Yeah, Laura, as you were playing those clips of these people like Morning Joe seemingly befuddled, saying that by no account is any of this true, I would challenge them to see if they've actually read the documents, every single page of the documents that we've released over the last couple of weeks. If not, go to odni.gov, G-O-V. It's all right there for anyone to see. And those who go in and read this will see how President Obama directed that a National Security Council meeting be called to talk about Russia, that the report that came out of that meeting was filled with tasks that were delivered by James Clapper's assistant to John Brennan and to other elements of the intelligence community. John Brennan was the head of the CIA at the time, all saying per the president's direction, per the president's order. And very specifically, they were tasked to create an intelligence assessment that detailed how Moscow tried to influence the election, not if, but how. And this was the beginning of this manufactured intelligence assessment where they knowingly wrote things in this assessment that were false, and they knew they were false. They knew that they were basing it on discredited intelligence or documents like the Steele dossier that was politically motivated and that they knew was false. And this was how they came up with the Russia hoax that was then weaponized and used to try to delegitimize the president, President Trump, and to try to ultimately enact this years-long coup throughout his entire 4 years of his first administration.
So what exactly does it mean by a coup? It's the interruption of the process of democracy by others that want to keep power for themselves. There cannot be a higher disrespect for anyone in office and in power, especially those that say that no one is above the law. And that comes way back from the Magna Carta 1215. And apologies and thanks to Wolfgang, who pointed out the typo and the misreading that I did when I quoted 1205 yesterday. Definitely 1215, the Magna Carta. Well, meantime, in other news, a fellow known as Big Balls, Ed Korstein, was savagely assaulted in Washington, D.C. overnight. He tried to help a lady who was getting assaulted by 8 thugs and got brutally assaulted himself. And it meant that President Trump has come out and because of the back of that and the amount of crime going on in Washington, D.C., well, he's threatened to take levels the other way if they can't get their act together and sort out the safety of the people in the nation's capital.
By the way, I have to say that somebody from DOGE was very badly hurt last night. You saw that. A young man who was beat up by a bunch of thugs in D.C. And either they're going to straighten their act out in the terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize and run it the way it's supposed to be run.
Well, how about that? Them's fighting words. Meanwhile, Diddy has formally asked for a pardon from President Trump. I wonder what evidence he's going to bring to the table to secure that. Meanwhile, Senator Adam Schiff from California is now formally under investigation for what is perceived to be mortgage fraud, for basically getting a better deal for claiming 2 principal places of residence, which affords you a better financial deal. So small potatoes, but you can't be a senator and make the laws if all laws are meant to be for everyone. It's another big deal. Meanwhile, over in Canada, pictures of Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada. He's out there having fun at various different marches and taking photographs. There you go. Let's look at that one for not much too longer. And finally, we have heard that President Trump has threatened sanctions on Russia's shadow fleet of oil tankers if the Russian president doesn't agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine by Friday. First major Russia sanctions since Trump's return. UK's already sanctioned these tankers and they're still sailing. So we'll see what happens. More than interesting there. Well, that has been another edition of Channel 51 News. Thank you for liking, sharing and following and leaving your comments, and let me know wherever you see this show what you'd like to see more of, what you'd like to see less of. This is your news show after all. Thank you. We'll see you all on the next one.